And welcome back to Fully Equipped. It's just two boys this week. J-Wall, RB. That's it. No Uncle Gene. No serial killer. I don't mind it when it's just two, but Uncle Gene, as many of you who listen to the pod probably know, is out of the country. He sent us pictures from Italy.
Lovely pizza. Lovely
Man.
pizza.
Ooh, the pizza looked good. He's there with one of his kids. They went hiking and they're eating their way through Italy. It sounds like a terrible way to live. Thoughts and prayers to Uncle Gene. We'll see if he makes it back. I'm not convinced. I figure on one of these trips, Uncle Gene is going to come to the realization that life is just too good on the road and traveling, and he's just not going to come back. And we're just not going to hear from him again. It's going to happen.
It wouldn't shock me. It really wouldn't shock me if he's over there and at some point, he's like, guys, Europe seems pretty good. I can service robots from anywhere in the world. He's just gonna find a different balcony to watch sunsets on. I'm telling you, that's what's gonna happen.
Yeah, it is most definitely going to happen. Serial killer is pounding the pavement. He's doing the opposite of Uncle Gene. He's working his butt off right now. So I guess thoughts and prayers to the serial killer as he continues to. I think he said he had to get up at like 5 a.m. or 5:30. It's really freaking early for him. So he's not going to be doing this pod as we record on a Monday night. It feels like we're just getting earlier with these recordings during the week, and we're getting, as I've talked about before, we're getting towards that quieter part of the season. Although we do have some new gear, I should say, that we're going to be chatting about this week. But first and foremost, RB, you and I were both gone last week. We had a great interview with one of Artera. It's a brand new shaft company. One of their co-founders, Alex D, who spent 20 plus years at Fujikura designing. Man, he designed so many shafts while he was there. But I think the one that, again, a lot of recency bias, but that would be Ventus. He was the lead on designing Ventus. So some really cool products that have come out of his mind, and now he is over at Artera. So they have the new Alpha 1 series that recently dropped, and we had a great, Silicon and I had a chance to sit down with him in studio in Scottsdale and pick his brain on starting a new shaft brand. It was just a really good chat. So if you didn't listen to last week's interview, make sure you go back and check it out. You can do it on wherever you consume your podcasts or on the Fully Equipped YouTube page as well, where we've got the video. One of the things that you might notice if you check out that video.
New set, by the way, which I thought was very cool, but I'll let you get to that. I know what the other thing is.
New set, new logos. So if you want a little sneak peek of the revamped Fully Equipped logo, you can go check it out on the Fully Equipped YouTube page. Here's a teaser. Go look at last week's interview with Alex. Or if you want to wait, we're going to be releasing it in full next week. So, we've been talking about it for so many years. I feel like this is a really good opportunity with this new logo release to start dropping some merch. We got to do it at some point, man. We've been talking about it for years. And this is even going back to before RB was here. We had ideas we were kicking around, and they just never took off. So hopefully this is the time that it finally happens. But anyway, if you want to go see the new logo, check out the interview. If not, wait till next week. Other than that, like as mentioned, RB and I were gone. I was off the grid, out of the country. It needed some downtime with my wife. We've got 3 kiddos, and they keep us very busy. So it was nice to be able to go and travel outside of the country without them. But glad to be back. RB, you were traveling too. You were PEI, Prince Edward Island, right?
Yeah, my wife and I, once again, last year we went in the fall, and this time we went back again, early summertime, right around, which was actually very cool because it was the solstice, or very close to the solstice. So golf very late into the evening, which was a lot of fun. And that, because of the obviously the sun and everything, we had the chance to play a lot of golf. And for us too, being not too far from Toronto, it's really only like a 2-hour flight, which is awesome. And again, that was something that we really liked. A lot of people think, because it is like a smaller island. And, for those who are curious, little PEI facts, because I was looking up, I was like, what, 500,000 people live here? No, It's 160,000 people, and there's over 20 golf courses on this little island. And it is an entire province in Canada. If you're not aware of where it is, it's out kind of between New Brunswick and Nova Scotia, is kind of in that area in the Gulf of the St. Lawrence. Famous LPGA Tour Canadian player Laurie Kane is from PI, and
did not know that.
Yeah, it's a really cool little spot to play a ton of golf, and that's what my wife and I did. From an equipment perspective, I will say it was very, very windy. So I brought along, rather than playing with my 7-wood, I brought along a new TaylorMade DHY, which was exquisite in the wind. Let me tell you, that thing got used a lot. I just wish I had brought my mini driver as well. That would have been very beneficial, because if you checked out the first Instagram story I posted, or the reel I guess we posted, was my wife playing a course called Red Sands. So when we landed, played this 9-hole course called Red Sands. And let me tell you, for a 9-hole golf course, that is where it is, and I think it's like $25, $30 to play. It has such a cool little routing, because clubhouse sits in the middle of the property, and the first hole is like short little par 4, drivable downhill, a little bit of water in front of it, and then you play across the property to another little par 3, and it's not a long course, okay? And then it just snakes its way up this hill, back, and like kind of crisscrossing up the hill. Every hole is like slightly different yardage. You're playing it all kinds of like different winds because of the way that it kind of sits on this hill. And then the last 2 holes just fire straight back down the hill like a ski slope. And then you come back up to this little finishing par 3. And for all the people that I talk to out there, it's a welcoming course for obviously us as just tourists. And then, in front of us, there were 2 groups of junior like kids just like messing around and playing around, which was a blast. And for us, we have two daughters. You have 3 kids. We got 2. To think that there's a place like this that would allow us, if you wanted to have kids out there, they're a little older, to go do that. It was a blast. So that was kind of our first foray into golf from PI. We landed, which again, 2 terminal airport in Charlottetown is amazing. There's no traffic on this whole island. I'm telling you right now, we got anywhere we had to go. The only time we got stopped was when there was a tractor, but that was fine. We got around that pretty quick. Next day, we played Green Gables. So if you are a literary buff, you might recognize Green Gables from Anne of Green Gables. This is the area where we stayed, is actually where was the inspiration from the author for Anne of Green Gables. She is everywhere. And Green Gables golf course actually wraps around the homestead of where the author drew their inspiration from for these characters. It is an old Stanley Thompson golf course, which was redesigned, and it plays kind of up and down all over kind of around the property that's there in the park. So it is like near a provincial park. And then there are a bunch of holes that go out towards the dunes. A friend of mine, Scott McLeod, who's actually from PEI, great golf teacher, great instructor. He actually sent me some really cool historical pictures of some of the holes that actually used to sit out in the sand dunes. They used to have to go out there with like a snowplow in the summer, because they would just blow across the one single road that was there. So just like to think of like how close it was to the dunes, it was literally like right there. So part of the redesign a number of years ago was to kind of get it out of that area, so it was always playable. And then the next day we actually played 36 holes, which, as a nearly 40-year-old guy, look, we took carts, which was great. Is a lot of golf.
You got to do it at some point. You got to
do it. And and again, it was dark till like it wasn't dark until like 9:45. So like it was very, very easy to get 36 in. In fact, last year I was one of the guys we played with is the executive director of Golf PI, and he was saying last year we did 63 holes at 7 different golf courses. So we played 9 holes at 9 courses. Is that right? No, 9 holes at 7 courses, just to show how close they were within proximity. Glasgow Hills was fantastic, and as the name suggests, it is built right on the top of this hillside, and it's very, I want to say, it's not links looking, but it's not a links golf course. And the thing too with all of these courses, even like Glasgow Hills would be the most expensive of them all. We're talking less than $150 for a round of golf, and I can't wait to share all the pictures with everybody. Again, you can go to Instagram and check it out and kind of see like where we played and where we posted and all that stuff. But for an island that when you're kind of pulling in, you don't think it's too hilly. There's a lot of rolling hills that these golf courses are built on, which makes it a very exciting place to go play. It was obviously very, I'm sure everyone has experienced the heat wave we all had this last week. We got to play in it. So, again, you never need to warm up when it's 85 degrees outside and humid, which is, a nice thing when you're kind of get a little older. You get a little old and cranky. And so we went from Glasgow Hills, which was a wonderful experience. We played with two women from Vancouver, actually from basically the other side of the country, who had just come out by themselves. So I was completely outnumbered as my wife, two of these women from Vancouver, and me, which I'm sure is a rarity when it comes to running into the odd group that you're going to play with. And then we also played Anderson's Creek, which is more of a local track. And I say that just because there were so many people out there for what did we play? We played on the Wednesday. Place was jammed. It was men's night. And the only regret that I have from Anderson Creek was while we were playing, my wife was literally inches away from a hole in one. And we're standing back.
That's the literal worst thing that you can do.
We had filmed we were shooting so many videos of us playing golf, and then all of a sudden I get talking to someone and we're standing there and she hits this shot and it's a little par 3 and it hits a slope and it's kind of at the bottom of this, I wouldn't call it a funnel, but at the bottom of this 2-tier green. And we're standing there and all of a sudden we are screaming at each other because this thing is going right for the hole. We're like, no, please, please, please. I'm like, we want it to go in. It would be her second hole in one. I've never had one.
Whoa. How many years has your wife been playing golf for?
Oh, she's been playing golf since she was a teenager.
Okay.
A lot of people think, here, this is the other thing. People always ask me, they're like, oh, it must have been great when you got your wife into golf and you can take her golfing. No. She played golf before she met me, which I think
she's got a really good swing, by the way.
You know what's helped?
Yeah, it's incredibly efficient.
And I say that, and people ask me a thing like I did any of this, and I've other than helping her with her gear, which she's got basically a bag full of Zexio stuff right now, which helps a lot because of her swing speed and everything. I have no responsibility for her golf swing whatsoever. So people are like, oh, all that stuff. I have nothing to do with it. Great lesson for people who are curious about getting other people into golf. Get them lessons right away with an instructor. So when you're talking about laying down the baseline for creating good fundamentals, she didn't play for 10 years, and that's the golf swing she had after kind of getting back into it 3 years ago. Because obviously we have kids and we moved and do all these other things, right? So, anyways, she almost had a hole in one, which I was very upset that I didn't film. And yeah, the other guys we were playing with were freaking out. Well, first of all, we were excited because we thought we were going to drink for free. And then the next day we ended up going and playing another course, which again was right near us. All these courses were in the Cavendish area of PI, and it was Eagles Glen. Another great golf course, was so much fun to play. And I think the big thing that kind of really ties it all together is the fact that because if you're in one area, all these golf courses are within, I would say I think less than 10 minutes to get to any single one of these golf courses. Lots of food options around. One of the places we went for dinner was called The Table. Last year we did this big tasting where it was all local food and drink. And we did that this year again at another place. And it was 7-course meal. We had scallops, we had lobster, we had local cheeses, local wines. It was wonderful. Again, it was called The Table. And those are the kind of things where, when you're at home and you just don't get to go and experience those kind of things. So to be able to do it and try and have the chef come out and talk to you about all of the different foods, it was really, really cool. And also, last but not least, if you're in PI, eat oysters. They're so good.
If you don't, you should get kicked off the island.
Yeah. And to that point again, my wife was never someone who was into seafood at all. I love sushi, as you've experienced many times. Anytime we're out hanging out, if I don't get pizza, the next option is going to be sushi. And she doesn't like sushi. She doesn't mind lobster and stuff. Obviously it was an option for the meal, and she tried it and she enjoyed it. But oysters, she was so scared when we went in the fall that she's I don't want to eat an oyster. It's not going to be great. She loved it. And then of course, every time we're at a restaurant, we're looking for other places where we can get oysters. It was awesome. So again, from a vacation perspective, I think if again, couples golf, we saw lots of men's groups out there, played with two women who traveled there just to play by themselves and enjoy a golf trip. It's an awesome destination, whether it's food, golf, just exploring and hanging out and seeing all of the stuff that is available to do on the island. It is a great place to hang out, and I highly recommend it.
There we go. RB got a nice little getaway. Love hearing that, man. Sounds like a cool place. I've never been there before, but I need to Need to figure it out at some point.
I
Maybe
can't. I
maybe you
literally
and I
can't.
go. Maybe you and I go on a buddy's trip.
There we go. I'm telling. There's no traffic. It is unbelievable. Every time I ask someone, I'm like, is there ever any traffic? Like the biggest city, Charlottetown, is like 25, 30,000 people, and we got our bags popped out in like less than 10 minutes after getting off the flight. You grab your bags, you go to your car. It's just like it's one of those places where you're like, why can't travel be this easy all the time? Like
I
I
was about
just
to
wish
say, it sounds
I
like my
wish
kind
it
of
was that
place.
easy all the time. But yeah, it was great.
That's awesome. All right. Well, let's shift gears from a little bit of travel talk to some gear talk, because that's the only reason you listen to this podcast anyway. As I mentioned, there have been a couple of releases in the last, like 3 weeks that have been gaining traction out on tour. One of them has been more noticeable. That would be Titleist GT. They launched the drivers in the fairways at Memorial. And I don't think a lot of people realize this because they had 13 drivers in play the very first week of Memorial. And if you go back and look, if you're a gear sicko like me, you would say, well, what were the numbers in the past? And they had 18 when TSR released. However, that was when Memorial was a full field event. Now it's a limited field event. So 13 in play that very first week is pretty good. And they've been adding players. I saw that Jake Knapp added a Titleist GT driver to the bag. So they're getting some guys that aren't under contract. So that's the one that's more of the known. The one that isn't as discussed, and that's just because it's been more of a quiet release out on tour, is the new Callaway Opus wedge. And this is an interesting one, RB, because you actually did a little bit of digging into all the guys that are playing this new wedge. And it as far as we know, it's gonna be the follow up. This is no longer underneath the Jaws name. We're going to a brand new name, and we can discuss a little bit about that. But this wedge is taking off, man. You got a lot of guys out on tour that are playing right now.
Yeah, I mean, Schauffele been using prototypes since the PGA Championship. Chris Kirk's had him in the bag. Adam Hadwin, Akshay Bhatia had another solid finish this past week at the Travelers. Nikolai Hogard, which was interesting because I believe it was Nikolai, was at the Canadian Open. I went for a day, and even on the Sunday, when he was on the range and kind of like walking around and like left the bag down, I went over and like snapped some pictures real quick. Alex Noren, Eric Van and Rooyen, EVR, and another person too, which I think we should note, which I think is really cool about this because we're talking about major championships, is Yuka Sasso had one in the bag when she had her U.S. Open win. So she was playing with a prototype there as well. So there's been a lot of uptick on this, and I think a lot of it has to do with just the fact that we've been watching the way that they've been developing wedges for a long time, and we've seen prototypes out there for I want to say almost 18 months now of like different versions they've been testing. We snapped pictures in Rahm's bag. I've had prototypes in Kirk's bag that have spotted, seen different ones on the van. And the prototypes, when you're looking at them, they don't look that much different from each other. But there is obviously like tweaks as far as the big one, shaping, sole shaping, transition into the hosel, which is a factor of, just looks from a dress. And then the other one too, which I thought was fascinating, is there's not just the Opus, there's the Opus Platinum, which is a multi-material wedge that sets tungsten up higher. Now, as far as we are aware right now, it's only in the higher lofted wedges, but this is something where we are continuing to see companies play with mass when it comes to wedges. And it's all to do with center of gravity, because as we've talked about, just like with drivers, I don't design the wedges, but as you move mass around in these club heads, you create tighter windows, tighter launch windows, tighter spin windows, just like we talk about with drivers. You create ball speed consistency. And I think we saw that a couple of years ago now with the wedge testing from Mizuno, right? They had a lot of mass put up out towards the toe and up high, and we saw that it launched lower and spun more in our robot testing. So I'm like super curious to see an Opus versus an Opus Platinum on Gene's robot, and seeing how they launch, how they spin, because when we're talking about tour pickup, a lot of guys don't change. Scotty Scheffler, I know we're going to get to him. Scotty Scheffler hasn't changed a thing in his bag since the beginning of the year, other than his driver and his fairway wood. but you know, his wedge, I think he's still got SM8s or 9s in the bag. So
SM8s, yeah.
SM8s, right? So like he's not gonna change just for the sake of changing, which I thought was. I remember going to the launch at the Amex, and Aaron Dill was like, "Hey, Scotty, we got wedges for you here if you want," and he just goes, "Just send them to my house." Like just no interest. Like, thanks so much, appreciate it, right? But to have
Thanks for the
Callaway,
free wedges.
exactly, thanks guys. But to see them go through this very long drawn out process of prototyping, having prototypes out on tour, and then seeing them in the bag, like I think we're going to see a lot more Callaway staffers continue to pick these up. And just like with the Titleist drivers, we might start to see more players who aren't staff players gravitate into these wedges. So that will be a very interesting story to follow. And I'm kind of really interested to hear the technology story behind it. I feel like the Opus name is his relationship to Roger Cleveland, this being his last club wedges that he was involved in. I know he's working on another project now and kind of, I would say, semi-retired. So from a design perspective, from a name perspective, I think they've got something here, and it's obviously proven when we talk about results on the golf course for the best players in the world.
Yeah, you mentioned some of the changes with this one, and I know you've seen it out on tour when you were at the Canadian Open. What are some of the things that you're noticing? I'm curious if our notes match up.
I think I would say that the transitional shape between the lofts, to me, from what I've seen, is something that we're starting to see from more companies because players are moving into those stronger loft, the pitching wedges that players are using from their iron sets, and then into the lob wedges, which I've seen up close and really had the chance to look over, is they have I know it's a piece of metal, but like a very organic shape. It's very, very pleasing. And I think it's going to be something where, you get that face open and you have this really nice, sometimes you open a wedge and if the leading edge is like really straight or there's a funky transition in the hosel or the leading edge is very round, all of a sudden it kind of looks a little odd. Like you're trying to aim it with a part of the wedge you shouldn't really be trying to aim with, right? Either you're trying to use the grooves or using a different part of the leading edge that you shouldn't. And I think that they've talked so much about shaping. When I had the chance to hold one of these 60 degrees and kind of play with it, I think that from a looks perspective, not just from the standard stock shot, but from that manipulation standpoint, I think it's something that players are really liking because that's the shots that they hit a lot with these clubs.
Yeah. This one to me looks more traditional than the previous Jaws. Just a little bit more of a rounder shape to it. Kind of seeing that up more in the toe. They look incredibly clean. The only like feedback that I've heard is people don't like the name, but I don't think, kind of like you said, I think that it's tied to this being Roger's Opus. Not entirely sure, but that would make the most sense. But people are like, I don't like the name. Well,
you call whatever you want.
You call it. Yeah, if you're Roger Cleveland, it's your last wedge. Then you can call it whatever you want. I think Opus is pretty good. So anyway,
Callaway had a driver called the FT3, the FT5. They had a driver called the Diablo. Now, whether that was a good performer or it sold or people liked it or whatever, like lots of names have come and gone in the golf industry. Opus is like, it's pretty, not to like say that it's a bad name, but it's kind of like very unoffensive versus a lot of things, right?
Yeah. What if you were to go down the list of Callaway names? Not to go off the rails here, but which one's your favorite? I have a favorite.
Like just favorite that I really like.
Yeah, like names. Yeah, what like club name did you really like?
I mean, Big Bertha is so freaking iconic. Like it's actually such a cool like name just in general. I actually, you know what? It doesn't come. I like the Solstice line.
Yeah,
which was a women's line. Sold a lot of those clubs back in the day. I always really liked that line, and I thought the name was really good too. It had a cool little logo. It was a sun, and for me, I just thought that was like a pretty cool brand from a branding perspective, from the logo perspective. I thought that was actually like one of their best ones that they've ever done. It's kind of interesting they don't kind of continue to run with that.
Yeah, I liked Warbird.
Yeah, Warbird's pretty good.
It was tied to the Big Bertha name, but yeah. Warbird was pretty cool.
I did like that.
Yeah.
We talked there about like traditional versus non-traditional, and a name can matter or it doesn't matter. But one place where a name does matter, and something we talk about a lot here, is reverse taper. Because what isn't a name, right? What is it? A rose by any other name would still be a rose or something like that. I don't know. It's Shakespeare, whatever.
Would smell sweet.
Yes, exactly. That's it. Thank you.
Would still be a rose.
We're going to remember our high school English classes here, right? But reverse taper, it is in the name, and it is from Golf Pride. And we have to let you know that Fully Equipped is brought to you by the fine folks at Golf Pride and their reverse taper grip. The thing with the reverse taper grip, as the name suggests, is it offers a reverse taper. So rather than being bigger in the top and smaller in the bottom, it is smaller in the top hand and bigger at the bottom. What this helps do, and it has been proven through testing versus standard and just perfectly parallel style putter grips, is that it helps you square the face more often at impact. That moment of impact is the most crucial element, whether it be with a driver or an iron or a wedge or a putter, especially with a putter. Because when we talk about being 1 degree off at impact, that means on a 10-foot putt, you're going to miss it 1 degree. Think of how important that is. And the reverse taper helps you control that moment of impact better. And when it comes to different shapes, there is the round, the pistol, and the flat. The round, universally popular for a lot of different grip styles. The pistol grip, more for those classic golfers that prefer to, for right-handers, right hand low. It puts the pistol in the top hand, really helps lock it in. So again, it keeps that hand still and helps silence that lower hand, which is what that reverse taper design is supposed to do. And then you have the flat. It's a more oval shaped grip. It's designed for, again, all different styles, works really well for palm to palm. So for those golfers who like to kind of interlock in a parallel style and run their thumbs right down the front of the grip, it works really well for that. Or what I've also seen, claw. Pistol and the flat work really great for those claw or pencil style grips because, again, it just really makes it easy to lock in. And beyond those three shapes, there are 2 different sizes. There is the medium and the large. And if you want to learn more, you can head over to golfpride.com to check out the entire line of their reverse taper putter grips, as well as their entire selection of full swing grips as well.
All right. Scotty Scheffler time. Because we haven't talked enough about him on this podcast. But the guy just went out, RB. You know, I think back a week ago when he's wrapping up at Pinehurst and everybody's starting to wonder, like, what's up with Scotty? I mean, what's up with Scotty? He had a bad week. He still made the weekend. So it to me, it's like, wow, okay. Well, then he goes and shuts everybody up and he wins the next week. And let me tell you, coming off a major championship to have to go to Travelers, I mean, you have to go low at that golf course. It's funny, RB. I was actually, when I was still working for the PGA Tour, I covered, and this is, people are going to be like, what the hell? But yeah, when I was at the tour, I was actually covering tournaments in addition to gear. So I was covering the tournament when Furyk shot 58. I was on site covering it for the PGA Tour, which is still crazy to me because I woke up that morning and I'm like, leaders go off late, and check my phone, so I can go out for a run. And I check my phone and I'm like, man, it's got to be something wrong with it. And refresh again, and Furyk was heading to the back 9, and you're like, oh my gosh! So I'm like scrambling to get my stuff in the car. Anyway, that tournament always has a
Cameron Young shot 59. He doesn't hold the course record.
I know, which is just insane. And it's also crazy that of all the guys to shoot 58, it's Jim Furyk.
Exactly.
Yeah, you think about it, it's like, I gotta be a bomber. You gotta get a bunch of eagles. No, just be Jim Furyk. Fairways, greens, make
probably no birdies.
Yeah. It was just a crazy round. Anyway, so you have to go low there. And Scheffler comes off of the US Open with everybody questioning what's going on, and he wins the Travelers for win number 6. And here's the wild thing. I don't know if you saw this. A couple people posted some comparisons to Tiger's first 15 starts in 2000 compared to Scotty's, and they're almost identical. Except Scotty has 40 rounds in the 60s to Tiger's 32, and he has about a stroke better scoring average. Now, as a lot of people mentioned, Tiger won 3 majors in 2000. Pretty decent season. It's also it's leading right into what we like to call the Tiger Slam. So he had a decent year in 2000. Scotty just has 1 major. He still has 1 more left, the Open Championship. But man, the guy has been an absolute machine. And as you mentioned a little bit ago, he hasn't made any changes. And I wrote a story today for golf.com just going back and highlighting the fact that for as much as we talk about Scotty's switch in the putter, he changed another piece of gear this year. He changed the driver. He also changed, I guess you could say, he changed the 3-wood too, because he's also in a QI10 in the 3-wood. But he switched to the TaylorMade QI10 driver, and it's one that we've discussed a bunch on this podcast. It's not the LS version. It is the true core head, the standard version. And it's the one that Rory McIlroy is playing, and a bunch of other guys have been using that version as well this year. And I think this also goes to something that people were noticing is a lot of guys that were switching into Titleist GT were opting for the GT2 versus the GT3. And so I was going back, and it's like I'm writing the story a little bit. I'll let you know my brain a bit on this one, but I wanted to write about Scotty's driver. I had spilled probably 2,000 words talking about his switch to the QI10 this year. But I just wanted to kind of give people a little bit of a reminder. This guy's won 6 times. Everybody's going to be talking about the putter because it's that hot club in his bag. But Scotty Scheffler, for as good as he has been with the driver, and last year was probably his best year ever with the driver. He led the tour in strokes gained off the tee. He was more than a stroke better than his peers off the tee. That is crazy good. He's almost at the exact same place this year, but it's interesting. As I was going down and comparing RB, I'm like, all right, pretty similar in strokes gained off the tee. Total driving, he's significantly better this year, and I'm like, okay, there's something going on. Driving distance, he's a little bit down this year as far as his distance, but when you get down to, and this is the crazy part, when you get down to his accuracy, last year he hit 62% of his fairways. That number jumped to almost 72% this year.
That's a lot.
That's a lot for a tour pro.
Especially as far as he hits it. Like that's
yes.
the other, I think we don't bring that into like the equation a lot of times, which I know people have talked about. You could use distance versus like your dispersion cone and all that stuff. But to jump that's what, two extra fairways basically almost.
Yes.
Around a golf, which is crazy.
Yeah. And for a guy who, if you put him in the fairway, 7 times out of 10 on a par 4, I mean, he's so good that I would almost like just bet on him every time to make birdie.
Can I be really honest with you? So even before the playoff, and I know it's not overly difficult because we've done it 6 times this year.
Yeah.
I had his his winner's bag, like ready to go. I'm like, I'm not jinxing him. Like he's gonna, someone's gonna do something. And it got to the playoff, and Tom Kim and him are both in the fairway. I think Tom Kim missed a little right, I think. But, he did stay in the fairway. Anyways, like Tom Kim came up short and hit in the bunker, and Scotty just hit it to 12 feet. And I was like, it's over. I'm going to go send this over to we all work together. We did the way things are published. And I was like, oh, it's over now. As soon as that bunker shot got on the green, I was like, no, it's fine. It's too far. Chance of making that's pretty low and low percentage wise. Just because there's almost this like weird sense of inevitability. Like he was 2 shots back, I think, starting the front 9. And I was like, he's going to chase him down. Like his strokes gained total just adds up to like, he's going to chase him down.
Yep.
And he did. It was nuts.
Yeah. He chased him down. He's been doing it. And I get the sense from watching tournaments that it just feels like guys are starting to recognize that when they feel it's I can't remember the last time, maybe Rory during stretches, but not even like this. Like this is a guy who it's not like he's getting on a hot streak. It's he's at the table and he he can't lose. And if you look at it, basically every time he tees it up, with the exception of the U.S. Open, he's right there in the mix. And that's got to be terrifying for some of the other guys. And I know everybody says, "Oh, they're all buddies out there," and this version of the PGA Tour isn't nearly as cutthroat as when Tiger was out there. And I would agree to some extent. I think there's a lot of like buddy, but Scotty Scheffler's not that guy. I think he's friendly, but he is so. And again, I mean, I've heard this from other guys that know him, and just from being out on tour, he's just ultra competitive. Even though he doesn't really show, and kind of, he's the Southern gentleman, but that guy's a stone cold killer. And I think his peers are starting to recognize, like, there's Scotty. He's a couple shots, like you said, he's a couple shots back of the lead, and you start looking at the leaderboard because he's there. He's just hanging around, and he doesn't make a lot of mistakes. That's the thing. And those are the worst guys to have behind you, because then you start getting in your own head. You're like, okay, well, I can't miss this putt, man, because if I miss this, I know Scotty's going to be making another birdie in the next hole or two, and my lead's gonna shrink. So yeah, he's so consistent. But to be set to almost 72% from 62% in fairways hit for a guy that's that good with his irons, it's game over most times.
I think the other part of it too, and I think this is it. It's a credit to, no offense to the bishop at the PGA Championship, because I know Ted Scott wasn't there. It wasn't one of his best rounds. But the way that they guide them, they work their way around the golf course, is what I think creates this like really interesting dynamic, especially when we talk about the U.S. Open, because he said like the randomness of the rough created issues. Like mentally, it was harder because you didn't know where to miss, because you can say the right side's better to miss, but you could, as I know Alan Basketball, one of our editors, literally analyzed every single one of the lies that Bryson got in the waist areas at the final round of the U.S. Open. Some want to say that he got lucky. Some want to say, whatever it was, right? Like he drew good lies. It just is what it is. But that could have easily gone the other way, and he could have had 3 terrible lies, right? He could not have advanced it. Whatever, all of those things happen in a golf tournament, and at the end of the day, they all factor out for everybody when they miss fairways and all that stuff. And I think for Scotty and Ted, like the way that they guide themselves around the golf course and know where to miss it and know where to place shots to give themselves the next chance, and the fact that his short game is really good, so you don't see them have those big misses. And that was the one thing that really stood out in the playoff. And Tom Kim hit a great shot to get into the playoff in the first place. But no, Scotty didn't miss that shot. He didn't miss that approach shot. And all of a sudden the pressure is on Tom Kim to like, well, if I hit the bunker, now I have to get up and down. Like he literally putted it to like two inches and it was over. But it's the shot selection, which helps off the tee, which helps all of these things add up, that it is such impressive golf to watch. And although he's not like Tiger dynamic or Phil dynamic or Rory exciting, the level at which he performs at makes it extremely interesting to watch, especially now, as your point, when he's chasing down guys who have come out and they are ahead. It's like, what's he going to do? Like, what are the shots he's going to hit that is going to put himself in the position? And he just keeps doing it. He keeps doing it. And it is a very, very impressive thing to watch. And the interesting, like, again, he switched from a Nike fairway wood, which he used for like 7 years, basically used it out of college. I know Scotty looks like he's 45, but he's not that old. And he's used that Nike fairway wood forever. Then he got into a Stealth 2. I think it was the Stealth 2. Then it was the QI10. Like he immediately switched, which goes to show how much time and effort they're putting into that, because he's hit some wonderful shots this year with that golf club. And that is a club that when it's your only fairway wood, you have to rely on it for a lot of shots. And whatever they got cooking in that QI10 like standard model, like it's working. Like it's working very, very well. Not just for Scotty, but it's in the bag of a lot of players too.
Yeah. I think also what I see when I look at his numbers and I see 72% fairways hit versus 62%, I look at some of the data that we saw during robotic testing. And we're seeing it. It's not just from TaylorMade. We're seeing it from other manufacturers as well. But this ability to negate the big miss, we saw it on toe misses in particular for QI10. I mean, some of these drivers had I mean, a couple of them had positive carry numbers in relation to center, meaning you were actually gaining distance as you were hitting it out towards the toe, which is, unfathomable if you go back like 10 years. But we've just slowly started to see this. Everybody would always talk about, the next driver coming out is going to be 10 yards further. That's going to be the claim. Well, now the claim is that you're going to get, and as I'm saying this, I could hear Andy Johnson and God bless the fried egg. I love Brandon. I love Brendan and Andy. They're two of my favorite dudes. But I know they're big on driver rollback. And any time that I bring this up, I always wait for Andy to respond. Anything to do with minimizing the misses. And I know there are a lot of people out there that want to see the pros penalized for a miss. Yep, there he is. Waving his hand. Folks. RB.
I'm in the same camp.
But we're going in the opposite direction, RB. We're going in the opposite direction, buddy.
Give 15 handicaps as much help as they need.
Man,
come on.
But it is crazy. I think this year more than any other, I was going through the data and you start to see, there's some drivers out there that, and typically it's the low spin. Anytime you're moving CG closer to the face, you're going to have to, at least you thought you did, you're going to have to give something up. And it was typically forgiveness. Not anymore. Even like this year with the Callaway Paradigm AI Smoke, the triple diamond head, that thing was not unforgiving. It had some spots on the head. And again, we're swinging this just at 95 miles an hour. So it's an average golfer swing speed. But the deltas on carry in relation to center and the other 8 mishit locations on the face, not that bad. So yeah, we're moving away from that, and the pros are benefiting in a big way, because if a guy like Scotty Scheffler, he's not missing big. If he's able to miss just a little bit on heel or toe, he's probably seeing pretty similar numbers, and it's gonna stay close to where he would see it if he was hitting it dead nuts out of the middle. So yeah, I think Scotty's number there, that fairways hit percentage, I think it directly ties to what we're seeing in the robotic data, which is more consistent clubs, less penalizing misses.
And I think that we can all, and someone asked me this question on Instagram a little while ago, like, who do you credit as like one of the best innovators in golf? And I said, to be, if I'm going to be very honest, it's going to be Karsten Solheim, because of cavity back irons, the answer putter, the swing robot. No offense to Gene, he had, I think Karsten probably had his first, the ping man. But it's almost like we saw this trend where like Ping had the LST, and their goal was to take a forgiving driver and make it lower spin and lower spin and lower spin, where we have seen other companies go the other direction, where they've created very long low spin drivers, and they're trying to continue to add forgiveness, right? It's almost like they started at different ends of this spectrum and trying to work to find the unicorn, as we like to say. And that's why Callaway, I think, is also released the Max Triple Diamond, right? The slightly lower spin, slightly more forgiveness option, because just to your point with talking about Scotty, like, yes, you can talk about Cameron Young hit 4 fairways when he shot his 59. I think it was, no, sorry, not 4. I think he hit 6 fairways when he shot his 59. But there's still data that's going to show that over the long run, especially too, not just for tour players who blasted over 300 yards, but for average golfers, not just hitting it further, but hitting it a little bit straighter. Again, looking at those dispersion cones helps so much more when we talk about players that are average swing speed players, which is why we tested average swing speeds, because if you can hit a little bit further and you can control your misses and you're still going to get that distance out of those golf clubs, there is a massive, massive benefit to the potential of hitting your next shot closer. That's a relationship to distance as well as lie. And so, to your point, like Scotty hitting 10% more fairways is a ridiculous statistic. And I think it just comes down to this melding of technology that maybe is the most beneficial to players that are in the higher handicap level, but because tour players have access to it, of course they're going to use it. I'm not saying that they shouldn't use it. Okay, the rules of golf are what they are right now, and I'm not arguing against that. I think down the line we should see them punished a little bit more. It's always fun when we get those old throwback videos. Everyone goes nuts over them when it's like, look how far look at that miss. Holy smokes. Like, yeah, it'd be kind of fun to watch one of those once in a while down the stretch there, folks. But there is that ability for players to get dialed in. And this applies to Scotty just as it does to the average golfer out there. Finding those clubs that are going to get you off the tee more often into the right places is a massive, massive advantage.
Yeah. It does make you wonder, and I know we're in June right now, but like, what changes is he going to make for next season? If he continues on this trajectory, I mean, he's at 6 wins. You've still got one major left. You still have the playoffs. I think he'll probably shut it down and not play much during the fall, and maybe we'll see him around Hero. But let's just say he wins. Let's just say he wins 3 more times. Let's say he gets a 9. I mean, that would be really difficult. And look, Adrian Riedfeld is one of the best tour reps on the PGA Tour, and TaylorMade is damn lucky to have him. But gosh, that would be tough for the guy with 9 wins. Like, how do you bump that stuff? Maybe you just say, hey, let it ride. And Adrian, from when I talked to him for the story on Scotty's driver, he mentioned to me that they had started working on QI10 pre-Ryder Cup. That's when they did the initial testing. So it started way back, and that was a very lengthy and thoughtful dialogue that they had. And Scotty was very, very open and honest with him as they were working through some tweaks of the driver. But it does make me wonder. Also, one other thing that it does make me wonder about, as I'm going through my my small brain right now, is spinning. But midway through 2024, which equipment manufacturer do you think is having the biggest and best year?
Are we talking tour or
Yeah.
like retail sales or anything like that?
Tour. Well, maybe you could tie to retail sales.
I think it has to be it has to be TaylorMade. Like Scotty's percentage win wise, I think is like the standout. Then you have Rory who's won some, and you've got the freaking spider putter, which feels like everyone's using it at the moment again.
Yep.
Which is insane. And I would have to guess TaylorMade.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking too. I'm thinking it has to be TaylorMade.
One thing before we move on, speaking of TaylorMade, for anyone who's curious about maybe, grabbing themselves a QI10 driver or anything else, including a spider putter, you know where you can find those things at? fairwayjockey.com. They offer the world's most extensive collection of aftermarket shafts and custom equipment built to tour level specifications. Not only that, they offer the lowest prices on custom built clubs and up to 20% less than the average club fitter quote from the nation's top club fitters. And for you fully equipped listeners, you can take an extra 10% off using the code fully equipped, FULLYEQUIPPED. We are talking less than 30% than those quotes that you might get from other club fitters. And not only that, if you are looking for those small batch items, things like the limited Cobra irons or limited edition, say, Bettinardi putters or Scotty Cameron putters, or you're looking for new Artera shafts or Ventus shafts. We just talked about the Ventus profiles. If you're looking for any of those things, head over to fairwayjockey.com, use code fully equipped, and get yourself loaded up with new gear today.
And by the way, Ventus, red and black, now joining the blue. So I
was going to sneak that in there, but I was we didn't even talk about it yet.
Yeah. The branding, the Ventus products. I mean, we knew it was coming. They weren't just going to leave it at blue. But yeah, that's out. I'm excited to try those. Have you tried any of the new Ventus stuff yet?
I've got a blue, and I've quite liked it. I think the general feedback from what I've done, I talked to other club fitters down at the PGA show this year. Fuji had a thing where you could go outside and actually hit them on the local range. They're actually like shuttling people back and forth if you want to go hit them. So you can hit them outside, which I think was a really cool way that they did that. They feel smoother. Now I know feel is subjective, and we talked about this many, many times, but the consensus from a lot of the play, and I talked to multiple players, like everyone, we talk in different tempos, different swing speeds, all of that stuff. And the general consensus was that it felt livelier, I guess would be the term you would use, or it just felt like it was easier to load. Obviously, a lot of different stable profiles now. We've got the red, the blue, and the black, which relate to again, it is still the Ventus line. It is their premium line for generally better players, but there are also lots of flexes and weight categories in this line. So when I say the better player, I mean, the red is still it's not the super high launch mega ultralight shaft. They do come in ultralight. They come in an R2. But again, we're talking about the general category altogether. So you've got a high launch, a mid launch, and a lower launch, or another way to categorize it, because I know we've talked about this many times when it comes to shafts, players that might not transition as fast, more of something that can fit a lot of different players. And then the black option, which is the one for players that might have a quicker transition, little stiffer in the handle. And even with that, like that stiffness, that built up section that's going to offer that extra stability, still feels softer, still feels easier to load without giving up control, which is I think what a lot of players are looking for nowadays. And we've seen this trend too, where like, I know it's long drive, but guys like Martin Baumgartner and a lot of players out there using basically senior flex shafts because it helps them gain more club head speed. To think of applying, not necessarily that going super soft, but applying the idea that a shaft can feel more lively. It feels like it's going to load more, create more ball speed because of the stability, all of that built in. And now you've gone from one option to three options. And yes, this was probably the least best kept secret in golf, especially when they launched the Velocore Plus, the blue, and you saw like the promo, and they'd be like, it's like a black shaft in the background or a red shaft in the background. It's like, we know it's coming, so when is it coming? And I think the biggest thing is these shafts have been so popular. Like the Ventus has been an extremely popular shaft, and I wrote about this today when with their launch, like talking and discussing the launch, is that the reason these things don't get launched all at the same time is because they're literally keeping up to inventory. Like they are trying to make sure that when they announce it, you can go into your local club fitter and order it. They don't want to just say it and then you have to wait 4 months for one of these things. So that's why there are these staggered starts with a lot of these companies, especially graphite shafts that are made in not like massive batches because of the materials that are used and the tolerances that are being kept, right? So I think this is a great addition to the line. And so you've had the original around for a while. You've got the TR. TR is not going anywhere. And then you've got the new Velocore Plus, which is going to work for a lot of players that, again, is a little bit more lively in feel. And, speaking of like getting True Spec, they did a video on it. We didn't cover it, but they did a video on it today. You can find it on the YouTube channel. So pretty cool way to like dive into it with it.
Yeah, for sure. All right. So we're going to wrap up. One thing I did want to point out. So the pod before the interview last week, we were discussing Seymour, and they were releasing 300, the last batch of 300 putters of the special limited edition Payne Stewart putter. And it was, built to his exact specs down to the grip. And I was talking about how cool it was. And it's funny, you never are quite sure who listens to the podcast, but I did have somebody reach out on the Seymour side and say, "Hey, we'll save one of these for you." And I was like, I mean, that's very nice, but I could just go, I could buy one. Like if I want to get one, I'll buy it. And so my dad showed up here at our house today, and he handed me a box, and I'm like, what's this box? It looks like a golf club box. And sure enough, my dad bought me the putter. Nice guy that he is. I love him. That was just like a really cool moment. Like he handed me the box and I opened it up and I was like, oh my gosh, it's the Seymour. So shout out to my dad for making my year. That was a really cool gift. And I got to find a place for it now, but it's got the engraved plates and everything. So you kind of would almost like,
how is that little plate? Cause I thought the plate was like really cool.
Yeah, the plate's really cool, but it also has one that I didn't realize is a part of the whole like presentation, which is basically this is a special putter for Payne Stewart's win at the 99 US Open and the putt. And anyway, I don't, it's over here in my golf closet right now, but yeah, it's pretty awesome, man. I'm super jacked to have it here. So anyway, shout out to him for making that happen. Anyway, all right, on that sappy note, let's wrap up episode, as it says up here, 246 of Fully Equipped. We're getting close to 250. As always, if you want more gear goodness, check us out on the social channels. We are at Fully Equipped Golf on YouTube and Instagram, and at Fully_Equipped on Twitter. Hopefully, Uncle Gene and Serial Killer will be back next week. If not, you're just going to get me and RB rambling for another week.
We're showing off our new logo.
What could go wrong? Yeah, us showing off the new logo. What could go wrong? No, I think RB and Serial Killer and Uncle Gene will all be here. So we'll get the whole crew and kick around some more topics. Thanks as always for listening. We'll see you next week.